What's up, YouTubers and plant lovers? It's Justin once again coming to you from the Big Blue Nation. Sorry it's taken me a while to get a new video up. I just recently moved. A lot of you know what that's like, and I'm still kind of living out of some boxes. But I got my new recording area up. Love it. And today I was going to talk to you about the care of an orange tree, specifically in containers. Now, I bought this tree probably about 6 months ago in the beginning, kind of early parts of summer, late spring. Got it at Home Depot. It didn't have a tag on this specific tree, but it was sitting with a bunch of other orange trees. And I looked at those tags. They were in a little pot, a little metal pot. Didn't have a drainage hole in it, so it didn't look the best. I've kind of rescued this tree, so I'm not exactly sure what orange tree it is, or even if it's a dwarf. A lot of times you really don't want to grow any kind of tree in a container unless you really know what you're doing and know how to take care of that plant. Now, I trimmed up the roots really well, so it'll give it adequate room to grow through the container all summer and in the fall a little bit. This tree does not go dormant. It's going to be an evergreen. It's a tropical. It's a tree, an orange tree, and I believe it's probably a Valencia. I'm not 100% sure if that's what it is, but the leaves kind of tell me that it might be. They're really long, ovate leaves, and they're really pretty. But as you can see, I'm getting kind of some holes where an insect has kind of been eating on that, and some discoloration with the leaves turning yellow. So I wanted to show you what you can kind of do to kind of combat these causes and actually keep your tree kind of thriving. He's put a lot of mass on this summer, so I'm really quite ecstatic with that, and I think he's done really well. Now, again, we know that citrus trees are notorious for losing magnesium. They just kind of leach it out of them, and they need help with that. So first and foremost, what you can do to kind of combat the yellow discoloration and the brown or whatever is use some Epsom salt. That would really help out with its magnesium, especially it leaching out of its leaves and being discolored and all that. And what you can do, depending on the severity of the case, mine probably looks like it would take about 1 to 2 tablespoons of Epsom salt per gallon of water. If yours looks like it's kind of almost on all your leaves, I would go ahead and do about 2, 3, no more than 3 per gallon of water, and then just kind of add it on to the root circle right here, just where the roots kind of extend out, or just into the pot, and that will help with some of the discoloration and it losing its magnesium. Next, if you see that like you got a whole bunch of holes where it looks like an insect has eaten through the leaves, a lot of times with citrus plants you'll get caterpillars, some different kind of worms, a lot of stuff that you can see and a lot of stuff that you can't see. So something that's pretty well organic that I really like to use is Monterey BT, and I don't have any of that on me, but just follow the instructions on there, and I believe that you can kind of spray it onto the leaves or just kind of water it on there. But that's an organic kind of way to deter any kind of insect or pests that eat on your leaves, and especially the ones that you really can't see. So once you use that, that will help with anything that kind of gnaws on the leaves and the roots as well. And once again, it is organic, so that's very beneficial to the tree, and it can help with the fruit as well. Now, if you've given it a couple of weeks after you used your Epsom salt, and you still have a lot of discoloration and like a lot of kind of yellow looking veins in your leaves as well, I would go ahead and use some chelated iron. That's got some really good trace elements in it that will really help out your plant. I know it's got some copper, a little bit of zinc, but this stuff has been broken down several times, so it really won't hurt your plant. It'll be more beneficial to it as well. And that's again after you used Epsom salt and you can't really tell a difference in the discoloration. You may be missing a little few trace elements that your plant needs, especially as a citrus, so some chelated iron will probably help you out as well with that. Soil, I always like to put some organic compost in here. That takes a while for it to break down as opposed to some of the synthetic stuff that might be more readily available and a little bit cheaper. Organic compost will actually help stay in the soil a month or two or several months longer than any of your synthetic stuff. And don't get me wrong, it will kind of seep through the soil and leak out, especially when you water it, but it does stay in there a little bit longer than the synthetic stuff. Now, typically, I don't like to use pots with saucers on them. I like a pot to have at least 4 or 5, maybe 6 decent drainage holes, because a lot of plants do not like to be in soggy water. This is not not a willow. This is a tropical plant. It does need a good amount of water to thrive and to produce fruit, but it doesn't like to keep its feet saturated and soaking wet all day. So just kind of test it. Now, in the containers, they dry out way quicker than any other plant, especially one in the ground. So you can add mulch on top of your organic kind of compost and whatever kind of citrus soil that you have in here, and this mulch will keep water in your pot a little bit longer, so you probably won't have to water it a whole bunch. But general rule of thumb, if the heat index or the temperatures go up, the water intake level needs to go up for your plants as well, especially plants that do like water. So you'll just kind of have to stick your finger down in there and check and make sure. If about the top half inch to an inch of the soil is dry, I would go ahead and add more water. But if it's still pretty wet and you pull your finger out and there's soil stuck to it, it is a little bit wet still, and you probably can hold off a day or two on giving your tree water. Just kind of go outside and feel the sun. Think, do I need water? Because your trees and your plants are going to need water as well. And as I was saying earlier, this is an evergreen tree, so around the fall I'm going to bring him in. It's starting to be early fall now here in Kentucky, so in about another week or two I'll probably go ahead and bring him in. Oranges, like the sweet oranges, they're very good at being slightly chilled. They can take temperatures down around 20 degrees, maybe even a little bit lower than that, but not by much. They like a slight chill, and the heavy produced years of oranges are always followed with a winter that's going to be really kind of cool, but not like freezing. So these guys that's why they do really well in Florida. Florida does get cold, but it doesn't get freezing a whole lot, so that actually will help out the trees, the orange trees that is, especially the sweeter ones. And then I guess grapefruits, sweet oranges, tangerines, I think mandarins, they can get down to about 20 degrees without actually causing severe harm to it or the tree actually succumbing to the cold weather. But most other citrus like lemons and limes, blood oranges, they don't do too well in really cold weather. But a sweet orange will be just fine, especially if you're down around Florida, maybe Georgia. But in areas like Kentucky, Tennessee, Carolinas, it probably would not make it, even if you put a lot of mulch around there too. Because like I said, the cold will get them. If it's freezing temperatures, below freezing, for a long time, your tree will succumb, so be very careful with that. Now, soil pH. They like slightly acidic soil. I think around 6 to 6.5 to 7 is what's considered slightly acidic. So your Epsom salt will kind of help with the acidity, but you can also use sulfur to increase the acidity for a plant. And you can add lime to reduce the acidity. Just keep that in mind. You can go to your garden shop and ask for sulfur or lime to raise or lower your pH of your soil. So they do like that. Now, I mentioned earlier they do have specific soil for citrus trees. You're going to need that, and that will take care of the trace elements that I was mentioning earlier. Now, oranges, they're picked when they're fully ripe. They're not like lemons or limes that can actually produce fruit almost the entire year. They have about one crop of fruit a year, and that's when they're fully ripe, and that's when they are picked. They don't produce fruit throughout the entire year like other citrus can. And they also bear fruit for about 50 to 80 years for the orange trees. But there are some orange trees that have known to produce fruit well into their hundreds for like a century or a little bit longer. So they do, once they do start producing fruit, they can do it for a long period of time, so be ready for that. Now, an orange tree that is like a dwarf, something that's been grafted onto a rootstock, can take up about 3 years to actually produce fruit. When a orange tree grown from seed will probably take about 15 years in order to produce a viable fruit. So be patient. And remember, they need lots of water and lots of sunlight in order to produce these beautiful flowers that smell good and the fruits that follow. So just keep in mind they need at least, just like any other citrus tree, 8 hours of direct sunlight a day. In the summertime, you cannot give an orange tree this windowsill stuff. You won't get a lot of sunlight that comes through the window. Even if you think that you've got the bay windows that come all the way out and go around, they need to be outside, sitting in direct sunlight with no other tree or any other shade from a car or a house or a shed. These guys need to have at least 8 hours or more of sunlight a day, especially to produce the fruit. And remember, if it's hot, you need to increase the water. Now, I'll set mine up to where it gets ample morning sunlight up until about the hottest part of the day. It'll get a little bit of shade, and then I might move him again, just depending on how much he got during the day, to get him a little bit of afternoon sunlight as well. So So just be careful because it does get really hot around noon, 1 and 2 o'clock. So you can kind of dry your plant out. And I'll water my trees at night so that they're not letting a whole bunch of water droplets sitting on there that can kind of magnify a little bit the heat or the light and kind of burn your leaves up. They say you can water it early in the morning if you get it before the sun, and then give it an hour or two so it'll dry completely before the sun does come up. But I never am up that early, so I like to water mine before I go to bed at night. That way it'll have enough water to get it through the next day if you know that it's going to be really particularly hot out. And if you live anywhere else other than zones like 9 or 10, you're probably going to have to bring your tree inside for the wintertime like I do. So keep in mind when choosing a pot, you probably want to go plastic because that doesn't leach out a bunch of water, kind of like the terracottas do. The ceramics are okay, but as your tree gets bigger, you're going to have more soil and more mass of your tree in there, and that's just a whole lot more huffing and puffing that you're going to have to do to bring your tree into the house. So I would probably go with the plastic as it gets bigger because it is cheaper and it's easier to move, and it holds just about the same amount, and it is almost kind of indestructible. That's really all I know about these trees. I mean, they have beautiful ovate kind of glossy green leaves, and as I was showing you, there are a little bit of discoloration, but that's easily fixed. These trees do have beautiful flowers that smell delicious in the springtime, and they produce a good valuable fruit later on after they've been around for a little bit. So if you can, find one that's been grafted so you'll get fruit a little bit quicker, and make sure if you have it in a pot that it is a dwarf variety. You can go to your garden store and ask them where the dwarf section is, especially with citrus trees. They love to carry that. And if you can't find it there, look online, but they're great trees to have. And if it's not a dwarf variety, you're going to have to prune a lot and prune the roots as well. Now, you'll want to prune back some of the leaves so that the lower leaves can kind of get some sunlight. Now, he is still adding on some mass. As I said, he was a rescue plant, so I'm not going to trim anything this year. Next year, as the spring comes on, I'll see how he's doing and maybe trim it back a little bit. I don't know though, it just depends on how the winter was and how the new spring will be. But anytime you see any stems that are crossing, make sure you remove one of those stems, because as they grow and they rub, they're going to create friction and you're going to have sores and spots where infection or disease can kind of enter the plant. So be careful with that. And if you do have any kind of lower hanging fruits on your trees, if they're older trees, don't get any of the fruits that are on the bottom and rubbing on the soil or the mulch. I would just go ahead and remove those, because any kind of friction or kind of sealed back place is going to be a good place for any kind of disease or infection to enter your plant, even if it is on a fruit. So just be considerate of that. Pruning is your friend. A lot of people are scared to prune, but don't forget these guys are evergreens, so they're not going to lose their leaves. But life is going to continue on just as normal for them when you bring them in the house. So they're going to need water a lot, and they're going to need some moisture. I'll use a humidifier with my guys, and some growing lights, but such as the price we pay for taking care of plants like this. I know you guys know what I'm talking about, so if you guys have any questions or concerns, just leave me a comment and let me know if you've had any kind of problems, if you grow any kind of citrus trees as well. Other than that, make sure you hit the subscribe button or the bell next to it. That way you'll know anytime I've uploaded a new video. You guys take it easy, have a good one, and thank you, YouTube. Don't forget, always plant prudently, guys.